Hey guys, in this video I wanted to give you a quick tip on it's essentially how to use your elbow flare and specifically basically elbow flare is dependent upon the amount of shoulder external rotation that you have on your bench press. So external rotation right here is essentially if you were to take your arm away from the midline of your body at a 90-degree angle, that's going to be external rotation. And then internal rotation is going to be when you actually put your hand more towards the midline of your body. That's what your shoulder is going to do, is internally rotate towards the midline of your body. So when you're bench pressing, a lot of this is mainly going to be dependent upon how much of a range of motion you're actually going through. Like how big of an arch are you going to be utilizing? And essentially, you want to be able to utilize this relationship between knowing when to basically externally rotating your shoulders on the descent relative to how much you internally rotate your shoulders on the concentric. And two examples I wanted to give of this is going to be number one, somebody that uses this like a lot because he has a very long range of motion. He's not really a super efficient lifter. Is John Hack. You can see how here he has a lot of external rotation at the bottom, and then as he presses up, he externally rotates his shoulder and flares his elbows through that mid-range. And you want to be basically, if you have a longer range of motion, you want to utilize that shoulder external rotation at the bottom into internal rotation at mid-range. Basically, just think about that as flaring your elbows, because that's going to help give you a little bit more power through your sticking point. And I want to contrast that with, obviously John doesn't have a very big arch, and so that's why he has a little bit more degrees of freedom with his shoulder, basically just more like ranges of motion he's going through, than somebody like Sean Noriega, who has a very high arch, who is notorious for it. You can see that he doesn't have a ton of external rotation at the bottom of his bench press because his pressing motion is super short. So he basically is mostly utilizing internal rotation of his shoulders and not a ton of external rotation. So the biggest thing I want you guys to take away from this is that the higher that your arch is, the less you're going to have to rely on tucking your elbows more at the bottom of your bench press and then going into that flare at the towards the during the mid range. And this is one of the ways actually that you can help mitigate shoulder issues. This is something that I've actually dealt with and I've had to change with my form, is making sure that I actually do externally rotate my shoulders at the bottom, and then I go into that internal rotation through mid range, because I used to press with extremely flared elbows, kind of like this, like Sean did, and I have a very long range of motion, and that just resulted in lots of stress on my shoulder and a huge loss of power through mid-range, because when you look at how John can basically fire through that sticking point at mid-range, the reason why he gets so much power through that is because he is internally rotating his shoulders or flaring his elbows towards the top. And so this is something that I want, it's like, hopefully this is helpful for people to kind of conceptualize this. Elbow flaring isn't bad. It's actually a good thing. It's necessary to actually, have synergy of all of your muscles in the bench press. However, you want to utilize it in the correct manner and flare at the right time, and not be have too flared of elbows on the descent or eccentric of the bench press if you have a longer range of motion. So hopefully this is helpful. If you guys have any questions about what I just talked about, please let me know down below, and I'll try to answer any.